Pleasant good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. We're happy to have you here for today's press conference, which we will be, uh, which will be hosted by the Honorable Irfaan Ali, Member of Parliament and the People's Progressive Party Civic Presidential Candidate. And joining Mr. Ali is our parliamentarian, the Honorable Joseph Hamilton. I'll be taking you through this afternoon's press conference. We will have opening statements from both Mr. Ali and Mr. Hamilton, after which we will entertain questions on those statements and on any other matter. I will hand you over to Mr. Ali for his opening presentation.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Members of the media, let me first of all thank you for your presence at this press conference, and through your medium, good afternoon to all our Guyanese brothers and sisters out there. I know the media has been asking for a press conference, but as you're aware, since I was elected as a presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party, I have been on a national outreach which continues to date and which will continue. And this outreach primarily to listen to the people of our country, to understand the problems they're facing, their communities are facing, the difficulties under which they're living, and the impact of what the government has been doing over the last 4 years on the lives and living conditions of people all across Guyana. Another aspect of the outreach has been part of the consultative approach in the development of our manifesto. As you're aware, we are in the process of finalizing our manifesto, developing our manifesto, and our approach to this has been broadened to include the views of many stakeholders and also people in the villages, in the communities, and on the ground. So these are some of the things that I have been actively engaged in every single day since I was elected as presidential candidate. I have visited almost every region, and very shortly I will complete the regions that I have not touched as yet. As I said, visiting these communities allow me the opportunity to listen to and understand the specific issues facing different regions and communities. It gave me a great appreciation for the suffering as a result of various policies and actions by the government. Now, you would not know, but the government has implemented many issues, many policies. They have changed their positions on many issues that is creating hardship at every level, whether it's at the agricultural level, in the healthcare system, whether it's in various industries in a different region, and this all is affecting livelihood and living conditions across the country. So it allowed me to have a great appreciation for the suffering of people, as I said, all across our country. Whether it's the sugar communities, logging communities, farming communities, the Amerindian communities, rice community, the mining community, or community markets themselves. The suffering is immense, and people have been telling their stories as to how life is worst off over the last 4 years. For a matter of fact, in many of the health centers all across the country, you're hearing stories of unavailability of drugs and medical supplies. And even when it becomes available, it is either late or available on expiry. These are the real issues. the real complications, the real problems facing real people on the ground. Issues raised are consistent throughout the various communities, covering jobs, persons, and we know that the economy has lost approximately 37,000 jobs. This is a major issue in communities all across the country where people are crying out in relation to jobs. The availability of money, disposable income is a major issue, and this has a direct correlation with the more than 200 new taxes, license fees, and increased cost of living over the last 4 years. Absence of government. In many of the communities, the residents would have complained about the unavailability of government not reaching out to them. And we have seen over the last few months since the no confidence motion, there has been a new push by government to reach people, and government has been absent over the last 4 years. Broken promises, false promises, the healthcare system collapsing, the educational system collapsing, increased cost of living. These are all issues that various communities and our Guyanese brothers and sisters would have been raising consistently as I would have embarked on these outreaches so far. There is a general feeling of hopelessness in our society today. People are losing hope, so there's a general feeling of hopelessness, dissatisfaction, and worry. People are worried about the future. They're dissatisfied with the performance of the government, and they're worried about their future and their future prospects in Guyana. So these are some of the real issues that I've been able to listen to and to bring to the fore as we're developing our manifesto. What is interesting about a lot of these varied issues were that these are the areas that the government had made great promises on. And one, in the Amerindian communities, our Amerindian brothers and sisters are remembering the promise that they would have their land titles given to them. There'll be the expedited land titling process. To date, not a single new land title has been given out under this government. And this is a story, and the story continues in different sectors and different areas all across Guyana. So I have examined the promises that were made by the APNU AFC government in their manifesto, and I'll give an update on where we are. The promise of macroeconomic stability, and this was a direct promise in the 2015 manifesto, macroeconomic stability, making Guyana the Singapore of the Americas. This was the promise of the APNU AFC government. What is the reality? The reality is that Guyana fell by 2 places in wastefulness of government spending, according to the Global Competitiveness Report. We also slipped in irregular payments and bribes. Our balance of payment deficit has increased by 239%, or 127 million US dollars. Our current account deficit has increased by 97%. Our total export today is lower than the anticipated growth by 58 million US dollars. So in making Guyana the Singapore of the Americas, it was anticipated that export would grow tremendously. Instead, what we have seen is that the total growth in export is 57 million US dollars lower than the anticipated growth. Public enterprises fell by $3.3 billion below what was projected. Revenue from public enterprises fell by $3.3 billion below what was projected. And production level of gold fell below the 2018 target by $11.5 billion. The production level of gold fell below the 2018 target by $11.5 billion. This is the reality of the promise. This is the reality of the promise made by the APNU AFC government that they would make Guyana the Singapore of the Americas. On the other hand, however, this government, when they were campaigning, spoke about the burdensome taxes under the PPPC government, spoke about VAT and how they will reduce VAT, and how VAT had, instead what we have seen is that tax revenue has increased by 183%, and VAT by almost 1,000%. So the productive sector is not performing, and what the government has resorted to is taxing the people to gain revenue. And what this has been doing is removing disposable income, reducing disposable income, leading to many of the hardship I spoke of earlier in my visits to the communities. Let's look at another promise. The promise to build an institution to eliminate corruption and government waste, fairness in the distribution of the nation's wealth. This was another major promise. Instead, what we have seen, overpayment, over hundreds of billions of dollars in overpayment, billions of dollars in missing vouchers, lost in missing vouchers, billions of dollars lost in missing documents, hundreds of millions of dollars lost as a result of breach of procurement, hundreds of millions of dollars in contract splitting being awarded, gross corruption in land distribution. We have seen a government that promised even distribution of wealth, taking away land leases from people and taking away social benefits from those that needs it the most. So this is how this government has delivered on this promise of creating wealth, ensuring fairness, and removing corruption. And of course, we have slipped on all international indicators in relation to corruption and government operation. Another promise is the creation of a new economy that will stimulate rapid development through Guyana's transformation from a new material producer, from material producer to manufacturing of value-added goods and services. This was another promise that we will move. They will create a new economy that will stimulate rapid development and transformation, that will move from raw material production to high-end manufacturing in goods and services. Instead, what we have seen is that value added within the agricultural, forestry, fishing sector declined by more than US $67 million. So this is a government that campaigned on the promise that they will transform these sectors, they will move towards manufacturing and value added. Instead, what we have seen is that value added within agriculture, fishing, forestry declined by more than US $67 billion. Value added in manufacturing declined by more than US $18 million. So we have a decline in value added and in all the sectors. And then let us look at what is happening in terms of loans and advances to the manufacturing sector. Because if the government, as promised, would have been creating better policies and better incentives for investment in the manufacturing sector, then there must have been greater loans and advances to the manufacturing sector. Instead, loans and advances to the manufacturing sector has declined by $23.6 billion. Loans and advances to the manufacturing sector has declined by $23.6 billion. Let us look at another promise. Achieve the APNU AFC promise to achieve rapid economic growth and development driven by the private sector in combination with the state of cooperatives. Instead, what have we seen? We have seen food, clothing, medical, and personal care increase prices for these essential services increasing by 4.6%, 4.3%, and 4% respectively. We have seen that domestic credit to the central government increasing by $83 billion. So instead of credit increasing to the private sector, stimulating private sector growth and development and advancement, creating new opportunities, what we have seen is that domestic credit to the central government has increased by $83 billion. On the other hand, we are seeing non-performing loans increase by $23 billion. Non-performing loans is increasing by $23 billion, and most of this is concentrated in the business enterprises and at the household level. We have seen that the average return on equity from commercial bank declining by almost 20%. Average return on equity by the commercial bank declining by almost 20%. We have seen a deficit by public enterprise increasing, the deficit in public enterprises increasing by 1,050% or $15 billion. Another promise was fair taxes, allowing paychecks to go further. So this promise was about fair taxes, ensuring that your paychecks would create more disposable income for you at the end of the day. What has the government achieved? We have seen instead the imposition of more than 200 new tax measures. We have seen private consumption reduced by $77 billion. Private consumption in our country, which drives the economy, which drives economic activity, which drives spending, which is important in the creation of jobs and the creation of wealth, has declined by $77 billion. Private consumption has declined by $77 billion. The average total household expenditure is expected to reduce by $462,000. So imagine what is being taken out of the economy. And a lot of this is because people have to utilize their money for increase in cost of living, payment of more taxes, increase in license fees, and higher costs for government services. So what that means is that on an average, every household is spending $462,000 less in the economy. You can imagine the impact of this, and that is why the markets are suffering. That is why businesses are suffering. That is why retail trade is going down. That is why there is less money available in the local economy. That is why the village economy is suffering. These things are all linked and interrelated. Education. This government promised the transformation of the education system. They promised to prioritize the delivery of education across all levels. Instead, what have we seen? Instead, what have we seen? We have seen the country slip by 5 positions in quality of our education system. From a promise of transforming our educational system, according to the global indicator, we have seen our country slip by 5 positions in the quality of the education system. We have seen the global ranking of quality of primary education fell by 7 positions. The global ranking in the quality of primary education fell by 7 positions. We have seen the quality of our education service for age between 15 to 24 slip by 8 positions. We have seen inequality. They promised to have greater access across the country. Instead, what we have seen is that inequality in the education sector increased by 3% according to Human Development Index 2018. Inequality in the education sector increasing by 3%. This is the reality versus the promise that they made to the Guyana people. And it's important for us to understand all these promises and what the reality is, because we're seeing a government that is on the track now, they're on the road now, promising again, failing to upkeep even the most basic of promise that they made in 2015. But they're on the road again, making new promises, and promises again that they hope to fool the electorate with. So let us continue looking at some of these promises. The promise to improve healthcare, improve the healthcare system to regional and international standard. This government promised to improve the healthcare system to regional and international standard, to modernize regional hospitals, to invest in technology that will help diagnose potential diseases and illness, and provide doctors and nurses with incentives. And what we have seen instead, our healthcare system is the worst it has been for decades. We have seen infant mortality rate increasing, infant mortality rate under 5 months increasing. We have seen increase of deaths of adults due to tuberculosis. We have seen chronic drug shortages, poor working conditions for doctors and nurses. We have seen benefits to doctors taken away. We have seen gross negligence and corruption in the healthcare system. We have seen infant lacking immunization on the increase. Lack of immunization of infant has increased by 2%. We have seen death due to malaria increasing by 234%. We have seen HIV among adults on the rise, increasing by 2%. We have seen public expenditure as a percentage of GDP decrease by 2% in healthcare. We have seen procurement issues, including single sourcing, missing documents, restrictive tendering, missing contracts, costing the state and people billions of dollars. So this is another area where the government made lofty promises and has failed to deliver, and the situation is causing tremendous hardship, as I said, at the community level. Youths, when you go to the manifesto, the APNU AFC manifesto, youths, our future. They said they will stimulate job creation for youths, increase health and nutritional awareness for young people, create a youth policy to focus on reducing risk factors such as crime, drug abuse, and alcoholism. What we have seen, what have we seen in respect to this promise? What is the reality against this promise? Guyana has slipped 4 positions in employment rate in the age group between 25 to 54, and 7 positions in employment rate between 54 to 64. We have slipped by 9 positions in unemployment of youths between 15 to 24, according to the Global Human Capital Index. This is the reality. We are slipping in all the indicators as it relates to youths and the promises that this APNU AFC government would have made in relation to youths. For a matter of fact, our economy has lost 37,000 jobs. We have seen small business enterprise closing and young people having less access to capital, less access to housing, less access to agricultural land, and very limited participation in government and government functioning. This is the reality that our young people are faced with today. Public safety and security. And this one is really interesting. The government in their 2015 manifesto promised increased salaries for all law enforcement officers by 20% in the first year. Increased salaries for all law enforcement officers by 20% in the first year. Establish a Ministry of Justice and National Security. Make a term of life in prison after 3 convictions of violent felony, and secure prisons. They also promised to establish a police air unit at Ogle. None of this has been achieved. For a matter of fact, we have seen a reversal in the benefits to our security forces. We have seen a reversal in the investment in the security sector, and we have seen increasingly crime is becoming more dominant and a critical factor for investors, investment, and the people of our country. For a matter of fact, when you go to the communities, this is among the top priorities that the communities are raising with us. So we have seen the annual bonus that the PPP Civic gave to the security forces being taken away. The Ministry of Justice and National Security, where is the justice? There is great alarm in discrimination and victimization in our country today. Where is the establishment of a police air unit at Ogle? And then they said we'll have more secure prisons and safer prisons. Instead, we had increased prison fires and greater tension in the prisons and poorer prisons management. This is a reality against that promise. The sugar sector. What was the promise in the sugar sector? They said that they would depolitize the Gaisuku. Instead, what have we seen? We have seen a political decision to close the sugar industry. We have seen the cabinet directly involved in decisions relating to the sugar industry. We have seen, they said that they will have a revised sugar action plan. They would establish a sugar factories rehabilitation program. They will introduce many skilled jobs. They will accelerate development of a sugar refinery, and they will enhance the quality of life of sugar workers. Enhance the quality of life of sugar workers. Nothing about closure, nothing about downsizing, nothing about any of the things they did in the sugar industry. Instead, what do we see? We see the closure of estates. We see production loss of sugar, estimated at $27.3 billion. We see the loss in excess of US $183 million in foreign currency earning. 185 million US dollars lost in foreign currency earning as a result of the closure of sugar. We have seen increased land rental rates. We have seen, and if you look at the increases in land rental rates for agricultural lands, we have seen increases between 100% and 500%. We have seen increases in cattle grazing lands between 100 to 200%. We have seen increases in commercial lands between 266 to 650%. And we have seen increases in industrial lands between 544 to 1,011%. This is the reality of the good life. This is the reality of the good promises. This is the reality of expanding sugar. This is the reality of expanding agriculture. This is the reality of creating better opportunities for our farmers and reducing costs of production. And this government still has the audacity to go out there on a national campaign with new promises, more promises, and we have to bring them back to check. We, as a people, we have to hold them accountable for the promises they have made, the failed promises, and what they would have caused the Guyanese people, and the hardship they have brought on our Guyanese brothers and sisters. Then let us look at elderly and women, at some of the promises they made. The promise to increase microcredit and access to loans for women. The promise to establish job centers in each administrative region. Job centers in each administrative region. The promise to lower interest rates for female-headed households. The promise to implement a child tax credit program. And they promised flexi time for women. These are promises they made to women at the last elections. Instead, what we have, $10,000 transportation grant removed. In many of the communities, the women can't get the uniform grant and uniform allowance for their children up to now for last year and the year before last. We have seen a reduction in businesses led by women. We have seen reduction in loans application by women. We have seen that life is worse off today for women. Water is a key, an important, essential element for women who are taking care of their household. We have seen increases in the cost of water. We have seen increases in the cost of electricity, increases in the cost of living, increases in taking care of their children. This is the reality of the Guyana we live in. And these are what we have instead of the false promises, the misleading promises that this government came with in 2015. So that is as it relates to women. Elderly. Let us look at the elderly. They said they would improve social security benefits, lower prices for state-provided facilities. This was a promise to the elderly. They would have improved social security benefits and lower prices for state-provided utilities. Instead, what do we have? We saw that the subsidies for electricity and water was taken away. Today, the average pensioner is paying more for public services and utility services provided by the state. They said they will create elderly care homes. Elderly care, where are these homes? Where are the elderly care homes that they were supposed to create all over Guyana? Where are these homes? They said they would encourage retirement savings through tax incentives. Retirement savings through tax incentives. Where are these incentives? Instead, we have seen more than 200 new taxes, many of which affect the elderly. We have seen VAT added on electricity and water. We have seen VAT added on important medical supplies. We have seen VAT added on essential services for the elderly. This is the reality that we live in today. They said that they will support the construction of retirement homes. This was another big promise of the government. Support of the construction of retirement homes. Where are these retirement homes? Where are even the plans for these retirement homes? And to top it off, we see that gold reserve fell by $300 million, and government spent 87% of the gold reserve we had there. We have seen our international reserves on the decline. This is the reality of the Guyana we live in today. This is the state of affairs of the Guyana we live in today. This is the track record of this government in relation to the promises that they would have made. So we Guyanese, we have to be careful. We have to understand that this government now has not only failed us, this government has failed themselves. This government has created expectations that they did not even make an attempt to realize. And this is the reality that sometimes the government would like us to forget. Unlike the APNU AFC, the PPP Civic, we have a track record of delivering on our promises. And I encourage anyone to look at our manifesto, review the promises that we made in our manifesto, and you would see how successful we were in achieving those promises that we would have made in our manifesto. And I say this to say that as we make statements, and I've made many statements on some of the goals that we'll realize in our next term of government, which will commence very shortly. We have made statements on what we'll realize for the Guyanese people, and we have already put together a committee. We have a committee working comprehensively on these plans. We are costing every plan. We know, and so by the time we get to the launching of our manifesto, we know exactly which are the sectors that we'll target. We know the cost of what we're saying about. We are not making false promises and creating false hope. We have specific plans designed to achieving each one of the targets that we are speaking of. So over the past month, as I said, we have established a special committee that is costing every plan and that is looking at the manifesto and the realization of all the goals we are setting ourselves. Now let us take, for example, the sugar sector. The government, and I saw some commentators speaking about the sugar sector, and they're saying that Ali does not know what he's talking about in terms of the viability of reopening the sugar estates that are closed. First of all, I don't know on what basis they are making their statement, because we asked for a socio-economic study of the sugar industry before any of the estates were closed. It was never completed. There is no social study, there is no economic study in relation to the closure of sugar estate. What we know for a fact is that sugar contributed significantly to the various communities and to the national economy as a whole. So, first of all, the government closed this industry without a socio-economic study to understand the linkages, the social costs, and the economic costs. The closed estates, despite the advice, the estates were closed despite the advice from their own study. Their own study advised against the closure of estates. But this government still, after spending money on a study in relation to the sugar sector, they then decided that we're not going to go with our own advice that we paid for. So they proceeded to close the sugar estates against the advice that they would have sought. From a desktop analysis, let us look at what closure is costing us. And as I said, we are working with the numbers, we are costing it, and the details you would see later when we launch our manifesto. But let's just take a quick glance from a desktop analysis at what closure is costing us. Foreign currency losses. We have lost hundreds of millions of US dollars in foreign currency earning. We have seen increased D&I expenditure for central government that Gaisuku was taking up. We have seen loss of more than 10,000 jobs directly and through linkages. We have seen the impact of molasses now being imported, 14,000 tons of molasses imported. The average world market rate is between $250 to $300 US dollars a ton, I think. We are seeing the loss of contribution to NIS, the loss of income tax, the loss of community support services, greater expenditure on national budget. When we do an analysis from a simple desktop analysis, it would show that this far outweigh the subsidy that would have required to keep sugar going and keep those jobs going, keep the economy going, and having those communities staying alive. If you go to Wales and Kanji, you will see the hardship that this would have brought on the people in these areas. Jobs. And there's an issue that is raised about the 50,000 jobs. Let me say that when we met, this is a conservative figure. 50,000 jobs is a very, very conservative figure. And let me define some of the sectors that would create these jobs and opportunities. The ICT sector alone, if you look at the ICT sector and the stratification of the ICT sector, you will see call centers, educational services, financial services, security services, health services. Then you have ecotourism, agriculture, mining, environmental services, forestry, housing. And when you reverse the tax measures that has been inhibitive to various sectors, you will see the further strengthening and expansion of those sectors. Then you have oil and gas, training, shore-based facilities, gas and energy development, local content, enlightened local content, machining and engineering. And if you reorient the budgetary spending that is there now, you'll be able to create all those jobs we have lost as a result of wasteful spending and misprioritized spending. So this is a very conservative. Let me give you an example. If you create 5,000, 10,000 house lots every year, because our target is 50,000, and let us say you have occupancy of only 20%. The average figure nationally now is 30%. So you'll have 1,500 persons building. That is the figure, the occupancy 30%, And so what that means, if a minimum of 5 persons employed, and this is a bare minimum of 5 persons is employed on each house, that is 7,500 jobs right there, 7,500 jobs on housing alone annually. So this 50,000 is very conservative. Then with the reopening of sugar and the linkages sugar had in other segments of the economy, you're talking about 11,000 jobs easily. So when I listen to some of the discussions surrounding the 50,000, I think that, and I know that when we examine this at the committee level and when we were costing it, 50,000 is a very, very conservative estimate. It's the bare minimum. And I'm sure that we can achieve beyond this. Then, of course, we have to look at creating a better investment environment for foreign investors, for local investment. We have to look at, and let me say this, we did this before without oil and gas. We had the largest influx of foreign direct investment without oil and gas. We had the largest expansion in our economy without oil and gas. We had expansion in manufacturing and value added, and in agriculture, in housing and construction without oil and gas. Just imagine with oil and gas. So we have the experience. We have done this before. We have delivered before. We have achieved this before. It is nothing new for us. So in terms of our capability to do this, we have it. We are there. We have to ensure that we have a predictable, fair, and structured, defined investment plan. It cannot be unpredictable that today this goes for company X and tomorrow something else for company Y. It must be predictable, it must be fair, it must be structured, and it must be defined. There must be a defined pathway as to where we want to take Guyana and where Guyana would be. And this is what we are working on. This is what we will deliver. This is what we will ensure is in place when we're in government. And we have to ensure that government, as it is now, government is crowding out the private sector. The government is crowding out investment in the private sector because they're outstripping the private sector in borrowing in the commercial banks. We have to ensure that government does not crowd out the private sector so that the private sector would have opportunity to access capital at a cheaper rate and so on. And of course, we have the wider sectors too that we're working on. As I said, I don't see myself as Mr. Know-it-all, or I see myself as having all the answer, and that is why we're sitting as a committee. I see myself as President of Guyana very shortly, surrounded by the most competent, skilled, resourceful persons of Guyana that would help in an inclusive manner to bring development, to bring betterment, and to bring improvement to Guyana. That is how I see it in the future. So we have to look at creating greater confidence in our country. We have to look at our security sector, issues of regionalization, use of ICT, the modernizing of our police force, welfare issues, better working conditions, specialized crime fighting unit, strategic partnership, better salaries, better conditions of service for our personnel in the security forces. We have to look at our educational system. We have to look at the use of ICT, increased access, universal secondary education, incentives for specialized areas of study linked to our economy. And we have to look at scholarship program, especially linking those programs to the output of the economy and where we see the economy in another 5, 10, 15 years, and what are the skill sets that will be needed in taking our economy to that destination. We have to look at the housing sector and creating this 50,000 new house lot. We have to look at public-private partnership. We have to look at partnership with young professionals, partnership with clerical workers, partnership with students, with the elderly, with women, and in the international agencies. These are partnerships that are critical in advancing the housing program. And as I said, this is just broadly looking at the sectors. You will see the total fleshing out and definition of a holistic plan for each of the areas that I speak of. Healthcare, we have to look at focusing on the effectiveness and efficiency of our healthcare system. Transformative primary healthcare, ensuring that we fix primary healthcare. We have to fix primary healthcare in our country, ensuring that basic healthcare, basic needs in the healthcare sector is provided for. And then we have to look at specialized care and how do we invest in specialized care and the areas that we'll be focusing on. Improved and increased medical professionals, better working condition and incentive for doctors. We grew the number of doctors we have in Guyana tremendously over the years we have been in government. And this has been critical to our development pathway. And this is something that, again, we have experience in doing. We have to look at equity in the healthcare system, reduce delays, time lags, and better management of the resources, including the procurement system. So as I said, I'm speaking personally now. I think that I would surround myself with the best team. I'm a team person. I'm team-oriented. I think that we will achieve everything through a great team effort. I believe in inclusiveness. I believe in ensuring that we take the widest pool of skills and resources available in Guyana and put it to work for Guyana, a better Guyana, creating hope, creating opportunities for all Guyanese. These are things that I believe in, and these are things that will be integral as President of Guyana. These are things that will be integral. I believe that I have the experience. I believe that I have the competency. I believe that I have managed large-scale projects. I've been integral in policy making. I've played an integral part in the economic transformation and building on a number of the economic policies. I have shadowed the economic sector in Parliament. I have chaired the PAC. I think I have worked in the housing sector. I've worked in project planning, project development, in the Caribbean Development Project Implementation Unit. So I think I possess a wide array of experience. In terms of my qualifications, as I've said before, I've put all my qualification out there. My certificates are out there. These are things that I stand by. I have worked hard for every one of my academic qualification. I stand by them. They are out there, and you can scrutinize them. A number of persons, independent persons in the society, they have been shown to, including the president of TIGI, Transparency International, after he made a statement, and I've showed it to him. There are many media houses, it is all being shown to, and it is out there. My qualification is out there, and I believe I have the experience, the competency, qualified, and surrounded by the best team, surrounded by skills, surrounded by people who are interested in the development of Guyana. And let me say this, over the last months, tons of people, especially young people, from all political divide, they have offered their help, they have shared their experiences, they are sharing ideas, and you will see, when the PPPC launches its campaign, you might be shocked to see how many of those persons who believe in the failed and false promises of the AP and UAFC will be joining us on this journey for a better Guyana, on this journey for a Guyana that belongs to all of us, on this journey that will see the conditions that we live in improve. And I want to assure all my Guyanese brothers and sisters, we are all in this together. We are all in this together. We'll work hard together. We'll achieve together. We'll build a Guyana where you will feel as if you have a stake in this Guyana, and together we will see a better Guyana. So in the next 5 years, we'll see tremendous transformation. Per capita GDP will be doubled. Our energy sustainability will go to 90% from renewable energy. We will see internet connectivity covering our country. We will see growth in disposable income. We will see massive annual investment. We will see the elimination of extreme poverty. and which is now 12%. We'll see the creation of 50,000 new jobs. We'll see universal secondary education, reduced crime. We'll see our international reserves doubling. We will see inclusive decision making. We will see meaningful involvement of women and youths and civil society. We will see a comprehensive and well-functioning primary health care system. We will see investments in specialized areas of health. We will see reduction in the cost of doing business, improved productivity, expanded housing. We'll see we'll examine and implement new transportation links that will include roads. We're examining rails also, water and air. We'll create investment in tourism, infrastructure, marketing, and provide incentive regime for these. We will see social and economic justice, adherence to the Constitution and rule of law. We will see national unity, inclusiveness, and importantly, an unwavering defense of our territorial integrity and sovereignty. These are things that you will see under an Irfaan Ali-led PPP government soon to come. Thank you very much.
We'll now ask MP Joseph Hamilton.
And the question the media and the Guyanese people should ask ourselves at this juncture, where is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana? Is it a fair thing that we as citizens, we are unable to even have the necessary information? A man is leading a ship, he's the captain, and we're on the vessel, and we don't know where the captain can be found. About 2 Saturdays ago, we were told that the president was leaving for Cuba. We are 2 weeks hence. We are yet to know where the president is. We don't know whether he's here or somewhere else. Is it fair to this country? We must ask ourselves that question as citizens. The second point is, who is running this country? You have to ask that question. I mean, we have somebody who they say acting as president, Mr. Nagamutu. The fact is, does Mr. Nagamutu possess the authority and power to run the country? Those are important questions we have to ask. One time we are told Mr. Greenidge is acting prime minister. Next time we are told Kemrad Ramdatan is acting prime minister. And these things as citizens we cannot. It's not a political matter. It's a serious matter for this nation. We cannot continue whereby we treat this subject as taboo, as a matter we should not at all intercede in or seek to have some answers into. The nation cannot continue this way, as I said. And so you have issues that are piling up. The parliament has not met, is not meeting. One time it's to meet, next time it's not meeting. One time the ministers who have dual citizenship, they have resigned, next time they have not resigned. And therefore, from day to day, we are unsure what is the pathway. We have the Minister of Business saying the political situation is affecting business. The President says, no, that is not so. The business sector, they have said that that is affecting business. The President is in some place that is not here because all the people who are involved in business, and even you yourself, you traverse this country and you know that the political situation, you know that the economy is impacting negatively. And therefore, I just thought I'd say this, that we have a situation where all of these broken promises, we have a situation where the people's welfare is at stake. We have a situation where people are losing welfare. We have a situation where people are losing finances that they had. And we have a president who, for whatever reason, fails to speak to us as to how we will get through this, how we will get out of this. If you read the papers more so on Sundays, you would have an understanding as to what is happening to ordinary people in this country. The list of properties being auctioned by the courts and by the banks, it is growing every week. The list of cars, motorbikes, tractors, combines, whatever you, iPad, an iPad normally lends to small businesses and women. And you see iPad also, they have auctions going on. And so the situation is grave. People are losing their property, people are losing their businesses, people are losing things that they had acquired under the People's Progressive Party civic government at that time. The time when many people say was a bad time, so many persons acquired property. People who never thought they would have acquired property. I would say this, some people, the first person in their generation since they came here as in slavery and indentureship, they were able to own a house under the People's Progressive Party. Some of us who never dreamed about even having a car, we had 2 cars parked in our, and so we have a reality now after 2015 that is a different reality. And we as citizens, we have to call out the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye on this matter where we have a captain who we don't know where he is at any given moment to deal with this serious situation and crises that are facing this country. That is what I would want to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton. So there we had it, Mr. Ali and Mr. Hamilton with their opening presentations.